Hello, colleagues. After studying the ideas of William Julius Wilson and Jonathan Kozol, I feel that both men presented some compelling thoughts. The first being that underprivileged African Americans born into poverty are at a much bigger disadvantage than African Americans that are born into higher socioeconomic situations. Um, Wilson discussed how those in poverty don't have access to important resources that would allow them to compete with those that are more privileged, which in turn doesn't allow them to bring themselves out of poverty. He also discussed the growing income disparity between high income African Americans and low income or poverty African Americans, uh, and how recent economic trends such as unemployment and decreasing low skilled jobs um, really hit the African American community hard. He discussed how affirmative action plans designed to help the African American community and other minority groups really benefit the more trained and educated members of these communities than the truly disadvantaged, because the more trained and educated are in a better position to take advantage of the benefits these programs provide. I also read an article uh, that detailed an interview with Jonathan Kozol, on which he talked about the incredible incredible importance of early childhood education and the development of a child, and how their long-term success is a lot of it goes back to that strong early childhood education. Kozol discusses how many underprivileged families don't have access to this important resource. After reading about Wilson and Kozol's ideas, several thoughts came to mind. First, I feel that issues of income disparity and poverty aren't unique to the African American community. I feel these issues are reflective of larger economic and social issues facing our society. I feel like the emphasis on race and African American and the African American community is because there is such a high percentage of underprivileged that are African American. I feel this is a result of many years of discrimination and oppression. Um, my second thought was that although I feel that the high percentage of African Americans in poverty is a result of discrimination and racism and oppression, I don't feel that those are the issues we need to be looking at solving. I feel the real problem is poverty, and that many African Americans and others don't have access to the resources they need to be successful and move out of poverty. Uh, my feelings are that, regardless of race, uh, those that are underprivileged and living in poverty are at a major disadvantage compared to those that are more fortunate. I feel this is because of the lack of important resources available to the impoverished and the overall negative impact poverty has on people. Uh, Lastly, I feel the best thing we could do to help the African American community prosper is to commit to solving the poverty issue. Uh, when I thought about why so, when I thought about why so little about the had been done about the issues Wilson and Kozel raised, um, several thoughts came to mind. The first thought that came to mind was that there has been a lot of discussion about the state of the American African community and needing to help it improve. And I feel that things have been done with that goal in mind. However, I feel the strategies used haven't been as successful as many hoped they would be. For example, uh, earlier I discussed the topic of affirmative action programs. I feel like programs such as these have been quite beneficial for the more educated and trained members of the African American community and other minority groups, because they are in better position to take advantage of the benefits of these programs. I do feel these types of programs have improved the African American community uh, as a whole, but however, I feel they have done a little to help the truly underprivileged members living in poverty. My second thought was that many people are unaware or misguided on the issues. I feel that there are quite a few people who are unaware of the issues. Um, I know I never really truly understood that those living in poverty had a lot harder time succeeding, or why they did, until he talked about it during a few of my undergraduate classes. That was the first time that I really understood that those in poverty struggle to succeed because they don't have access to the same resources that don't have access to the same resources that others might. I also feel that sometimes people can be misguided or distracted from the issue. For example, not to say that race and discrimination aren't factors, but I think sometimes we can get stuck on issues like these and lose sight of the really uh, underlying issue of poverty, which I feel is the actual root of the problem. I do think the election of President Obama impacted diversity and equality. I think his election brought the issues to the forefront. It could be that I was more unaware, but since his election, I do feel that uh, issues have been talked about a lot more. I don't recall hearing as much about the issues of race, equality, and diversity before his elections. Uh, I think his election and success showed that our country has come a long ways. Uh, I think that 20, 30 years ago, nobody would have thought it was possible that we would elect an African American president. Uh, I think it's also demonstrated that poverty is an issue that we really need to fix, and that when born into advantageous situations where their family has access to important resources, African Americans have the opportunity to reach high levels of success in their careers.